Remarkable people overcoming remarkable challenges with resilience, dedication, community, and grit. Listen as they share their stories of overcoming adversity. Open your eyes to what is genuinely possible for all of us. Authentic Adversity with host Chris Howe.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Authentic Adversity podcast. Today, I sit down with a dear friend of mine. He's a transformational life coach. He is a wealth of knowledge and experience. The always inspiring Kareem Zarwi. Welcome.
Thank you, Chris. It's an honor to be here. Your words are extremely touching. I consider you absolutely the same way. I've always got a bent ear when I hear you speaking. You know, you're so vulnerable and direct and clear, and it's like this very refreshing, inspiring touch of the heart. So I'm
thank
really
you,
blessed
brother.
to be here. Thank you.
You know, and I feel the same way about you. I really appreciate your kind words. It means a lot, especially coming from a guy like you. You and I know each other from kind of the online space in a meeting that we both belong to, mentorship, which is run by a mutual friend of ours. And you're one of those guys that, like, when I hear you speak, it's just like, okay, drop what I'm doing, tune in, Kareem's talking. I mean, I get so much valuable and introspective knowledge and, experience-based feeling from you. And I've really, even after the meetings, you're always the guy to send me a message over Instagram or WhatsApp and just kind of like elaborate on a topic, or, we go back and forth, like, just kind of like encouraging each other. And I think it's really important to have other men that we can do that with. And you're definitely that for me.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Likewise. I mean, we've all grown up, especially, the people I've interacted with and come across these past couple of years, from these environments where being connected with our inner selves, our inner child, and, our more sensitive side have never been really encouraged. If anything,
Right.
They were shunned and suppressed. And to be able to step into that now at this point in my life and this point of our journey in our lives is really what is missing from becoming that complete sense of a full man, that Renaissance man who understands every avenue of his life and looks at it with discernment and actually questions his actions,
Absolutely.
And to be able to have that space it's a godsend, really, the way I look at things now.
Oh, I completely agree. And I mean, I think it's so important for us, to be able to share in that way as men, and just for everybody as, humanity, to be able to share this, open and honest fashion that, comes from the heart. And, this is an interview that I've been excited to do. Your journey has been quite transformational. And I mean, that's led you to the place you are today, and encouraging others and coaching others to transform their own lives as well. And, my hat goes off to you for that, man. You've endured a lot in your life. I just want to hear your full story. And as we go along, I'm sure I'll have a few questions, but I know the timeline, and wow, man. I mean, like I said, you've endured a lot, and to come out the other side of all that adversity has been, I'm sure, quite transformational and inspiring to others. Okay, so Kareem, I want you to just sort of paint a picture for us. You're brought up or born in New York City by parents of Puerto Rican and Lebanese descent. Can you kind of paint a picture of what young Kareem was like?
Yeah, it's a very fast moving picture, I would say, with many changing backgrounds. I was born in 1981. My mom's Puerto Rican. My father's Lebanese, and I have one older sister at the time. And we were living in Manhattan for a couple of years, then moved down to Puerto Rico to a farm. When I was just like a small baby, I still have many, many memories being there and playing, and riding horses, and just being up in the middle of nowhere, just family. Then after a couple of years, moving back to New York, then from New York to New Jersey, and kind of having all these different movements and never really putting down firm roots in many places, just shallow roots everywhere and picking up little bits of culture here and there. So it was, making friends for me was kind of difficult, but as it came later on in life, very easy.
Okay.
And when I was going from middle school to high school, my parents began what, unbeknownst to them, was like their divorce. And my parents sent us to a military school in Puerto Rico.
Oh, wow.
My mom went. Yeah, and it was either military school or Catholic school, and they decided not religion.
Okay.
And military school was really where I found like the first sense of myself. The discipline, the self-reliance that is needed, the inner drive that you really need to succeed amongst a group of peers who are all competing against each other and themselves.
Right.
And it was something I really flourished in. And by my second year there, I was top of my class,
Wow.
honor society, drill team, color card, like everything you could imagine. And my parents then shifted again and decided to send us back to New Jersey and live with my dad in the town we had grown up in New Jersey. And I kind of fell apart. My dreams, my aspirations there. At that point, all my friends were there. Like I hung out with older people at that time, people in higher grades, and, would go surfing on the weekends. And this is also when I also was exposed for the first time to like alcohol and marijuana as well. So It's a very beach kind of vibe, but also like this dichotomy of like really partying hard and then waking up at 4:30 in the morning, getting ready, like everything is shined, ready to go, and being in drill by 7 a.m.
Wow. And what age are you at this point?
I was just turning 13 to 15.
Yeah.
Before that, like I was never super interested in school. Like school was a place where I hung out with my friends. I got good grades just because I was smart. I like to draw a lot, and I was very artistic. I shattered my wrist when I was younger, and that kind of like ended that. Like my bones still crack when I turn my wrist. But it was a lot of this like start, stop.
Okay.
And in these paths where it started for me subconsciously to become this uncontrolled life. I have no say in my path.
Okay.
And the harder I try, the harder the barrier I'm met with comes along. So when my parents moved us to New Jersey, to the town we grew up in, where like I had very few friends. I went from the kid with braces and glasses to, number one in military school, shaved head, my body filled out, everything, and very athletic. And I pretty much didn't care about school anymore. I was like, I worked so hard. I did so much. I wanted to go to West Point, which now looking back at things, had that all happened, I would have graduated high school in 99, gone to West Point, got out around 2003. I'm sure I would be a pile of dust and bones in the desert in the Middle East at this point by now. Yeah. So we all have to understand that while life takes its twists and turns and it seems like things aren't really for our benefit, much later down the path, we're able to look back, down in the valley and say, oh, when I crossed that really, really tough, gap and crevice, and I climbed that ridge that was really hard, it led to this really beautiful, serene view and this waterfall and all these things,
Right.
And it only comes with time to be able to look back and see those things. But we're so like caught up, like trying to catch up to this idea of our life. Like, wow, I got to chase and I got to run to get to this point, where I can look around and then enjoy. And it's like, just turn around.
Yes.
Turn around and take a look back. The journey's been really beautiful and amazing. And and we have to take those moments. No one's going to sign us up and be like, hey, you're due for like a self-reflective enjoyment of how good really things are.
Right. Right. So at this point in your life, and you're leaning into drugs and alcohol at this point, rather than the scholastic side of the teen years. And so, what did you find in drugs and alcohol that you were maybe searching for, or were you, if you can look back at that today, were you running from something? Were you trying to escape something, or what was it that you found that brought to your life?
I think it was more like this feeling, of this empty void, really.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, and escaping from the idea that I don't really have any control anyway.
Yeah.
I don't control it all anyway. So what does it really matter? What's the big deal? What's the point? I can try and do, but it doesn't matter.
Right.
So, I mean, I partied a lot when I went back to New Jersey, and I'd party every weekend and either go into the city or at home. But I also worked hard as hell ever since I
Right.
was 12 and a half. Worked any day off that I had, every holiday, every break. And
Wow.
for the most part, would work in Manhattan, my dad's restaurant. My first job was a pizza delivery boy on rollerblades in Manhattan in the East Village
Okay, cool.
in the 90s.
Of course, it was rollerblades.
So I still had like that drive in me, but it was placed in that rat wheel, very
Yeah.
young age too. Like you got to work hard. It's the only way that you make it ahead in life. If you
Right.
grind and you push and you do better than everyone else. There was no you're good enough. There was no you are who you're supposed to be,
Right.
and you are going to find your path along the way. There's none of that.
Yeah, I think we're all. I mean, that's the case for all of us, who have kind of dove in head first with drugs and alcohol, and that sort of you fight with this this almost dual life of like trying to keep it together, go to work, appease your family and friends, and then on the evenings or weekends or whatever it may be, you get the kind of like fuck it's like fuck it, I'm doing what makes me feel good, and I have no control over the rest of it, and I like that loss of control.
Yeah, I earned this. I worked really hard today. It was a terrible shift. Let me drink 4 fingers of vodka,
Right.
But we're also we're trained to have that reaction. We're taught at a young age that is what the standard is. Like your standard is to work like this, and you're supposed to look like this and act this way. And then when you're not doing those things, you're supposed to go to these types of places and interact like this and imbibe and ingest these things because this is the societal standard.
Yeah, damaging to us for sure. So at 17 years old, you have your kind of first psychedelic experience.
Yeah, I was around 16, 17. And it was with mushrooms with my friends from high school. And we did them at my house. My house was full of all this art and really pretty fancy stuff. My dad was kind of a collector of pretty things.
Yeah.
But I was very quickly the one who kind of had this behind the scenes understanding of what was going on and kind of led the journey and was able to know what we needed to do next and where we needed to go next,
So you had a leadership role within your friend group or within your peer group, I guess, almost.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Okay.
And I was always very different than everyone else. I was always the person who dressed absolutely different than anybody. And just didn't really care. I didn't have this sense of needing to be exactly like everyone else. There was a battle of it. There was this need to, but this rebellious aspect that drove me to be different.
Okay.
And I think that definitely comes from, I had this experience when I was 9 years old. And it was my first transcendental experience. And it was very mind shattering for me.
Okay.
And I was alone in my bedroom, middle of the afternoon one day. I was expanding out to the universe and then contracting inward into myself.
Wow.
In my mind. And like, well, we go as deep and as far into ourselves as we can ever go. And all of the particles that make up all the atoms of everything are as far from each other as the stars are distant to themselves, right?
Okay.
And then travel out into the universe and the farthest depths of all the galaxies. And when galaxies look like stars and the universes look like galaxies, and so far apart from each other, and they're as far apart as all the atoms are, and I'm thinking I'm in this like wondrous space of like vastness. And I ask myself, I'm like, okay, so if God created all of this, right? What room did God do that in?
Okay. Yeah.
So like, where's that room? Where does that exist?
Uh-huh.
And then where does that room exist? And then that room and that room. And it's this endless kaleidoscope and just this like hall of mirrors.
Yeah.
And it put me in this void, in this vast void space. A lot of people talk about having their first transcendental experience and feeling this oneness and this unity with everything and fully connected.
Right.
And it was like that, but there was nothing.
Wow.
There was
at 10 years old. Yeah.
Like 8, 9, nothingness.
Wow.
And it kind of really put me in this separate sense of reality now when I looked at everything. Like I couldn't talk to anybody about that. I couldn't be like, hey, Mom, Dad, did you ever think about how the fact that, they'd be like, what are you talking about? And same with my friends. So I had this very distant sense to myself. Like I was always in my own mind after that point. And like, it wasn't until I found discipline that I was able to like pull myself out of that and be able to direct my life to anything.
Right.
But then it was constantly battling. So the same type happened with my journeys. I could see when I was on psychedelics that there was a lot more happening.
Okay.
I was never one to believe that like, oh, you're hallucinating. You're seeing like cartoons. It's like, no, you're seeing reality.
Right.
Like there's a lot more happening that we don't see because we're in this level of vibration. We're in this one level of hard state that we settle into. And this is what we see on this vibrational level. Mm-hmm. And when you peel back, all the subtle levels and you're able to like look behind these curtains, you see that there's so much more happening. And it was something that I started to see, mentally, consciously, like there's a lot more happening in the mind. And if we're able to quiet that large voice that we always have, we can pick up on all these other elements that are constantly trying to whisper things to us, speak to us and guide us,
Yeah.
So,
wow, that's beautiful, man. And so that this experience with psychedelics in your teen years has brought you back to that point, and it's probably a place that you really, a space where you were feeling like you were at home and you were growing in that space, right? So that added, it wasn't the chaos of like, alcohol and other drugs. It was more of a bringing back to center and like introspective learning experience for you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. Yeah. This episode of the Authentic Adversity podcast is brought to you and sponsored by Another Road Drug and Alcohol Treatment Center. Another Road offers a client-centered recovery program tailored to every individual's circumstances. Their focus is to create a supportive, healing environment rather than a rigid, rule-based institution. Their dedicated commitment upholds the individual values respecting each person's desire for recovery. Another Road understands that every individual requires a unique and focused approach to their recovery. Certain modalities of treatment are introduced along with the tools necessary for each client. Located in a rural setting, their addiction treatment center for all genders provides the perfect setting for a transformative recovery experience and sense of belonging. The private residential treatment facility offers an unparalleled program with counselors that have in-depth knowledge based on varying years of experience in addiction. Another Road utilizes unique individual focus plans for recovery that address the complexities of drug addiction, alcoholism, and prescription medication misuse. They have a 65% success rate when clients follow their program. I know many people who have completed this program, and they have absolutely rave reviews. To learn more, visit anotherroad.ca. So where do we go from there? You were a chef at one point in Alphabet City, Lower East Side, right?
Yeah.
This is what, in your 20s?
I graduated from my high school in New Jersey, and then just immediately moved straight into the East Village in the city.
Cool.
Went straight to work, and was there for a couple of years at my father's restaurant. And then we decided to build a new place, like 4 or 5 blocks away. So my father and I and one carpenter built out this entire restaurant on Alphabet City, and wood burning oven and everything. And it's one of my like greatest memories of my life, especially with my father. This time where we were able to build something, put something together.
Right, that's special.
And my father and I had like a very tense relationship. And he battled his own substance abuse issues, and same for my mom. So it was kind of like this like broken family that was trying to like puzzle itself together along the way.
Right.
And so while we were building, 9/11 happened. And that just completely shifted the entire energy of the city. And my father's Lebanese, so we obviously dealt with some of the issues that came about, prejudice, but it wasn't extremely bad because my dad looks like Robin Williams, so he kind of like can pass for anything.
Right.
So we built this place, and I quickly went from managing and working in the front to cooking and being the head chef in the kitchen. And I was between the years of 19 and 21. And so another really amazing time in my life, just spending all my time in New York City at that time. It's a very different world. I've gone back recently, and it just doesn't even exist anymore.
Yeah. Especially that area, right?
My sister. Oh,
yeah.
Completely different.
Yeah.
But also the same. I actually walked around a couple months ago for a wedding, and I saw a couple of people, and I was like, wow, some people just don't change.
You're still here. Yeah.
Some people stay. They stay in one place, and they just stay there and they get stuck.
Right.
And so I worked there, and after a couple of years, I needed a change. I just was like, it's time for me to go out and spread my wings or my roots or whatever was my feeling, and like not work with my family anymore. I called my best friend. He was living down in Miami, and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing here. What's going on? It's like, why don't you just come down here and figure it out? So I went on a trip to the Middle East with my dad and my sister for a couple months, saw a different way of life, beautiful, didn't want to come back.
Really?
And I came back, packed up my stuff in a rental car, and drove down to Miami like 2 days later. Just
cool. So you're a kid in your early 20s in Miami, which is like a hub for partying and excess lifestyle, right? And struggling, growing up with parents who battled with substance abuse issues, and then yourself with your own substance abuse issues. Is that now in Miami? Does that explode into something much bigger for you?
So I had actually taken maybe a year, because it was 9 months for sure, and then my travels in the Middle East, about a year of no drinking, no smoking, just working out really hard, just going all in. Then I moved to Miami, and I was 23 years old, and I had a great job lined up for me and everything, bartending, and was going to school, and everyone. This was 2004, 2005. It was money everywhere in Miami. And a lot of partying. And I mean, very quickly, I just fell right down into that rabbit hole, and everyone around me was drinking. My wife, my work was drinking. I started studying wine and going to school for that. And then that became more of my life. And cocaine was everywhere in Miami back then.
Yeah.
And I will cocaine became a heavy substance for me,
Mm-hmm.
I never like woke up in the morning ever in my life and was like, I need a drink. I need a cigarette. I need a line of cocaine. I had like rules for myself. I would never smoke a cigarette until after noon. I would never have a drink in the morning unless it was Sunday.
Okay.
Then it was Bloody Marys and mimosas,
Right.
or I was off and we're going on a boat. So these are all the things we tell ourselves,
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm in control. I have my rules. But little by little, the rules start to shift. The rules start to change.
Yes.
And cocaine was like a more like party kind of drug. It wasn't like a habit substance where like I needed to have it. I needed always to, where is it? It was more like, okay, we're going out, we're going to have fun, we're going to be partying, or we're going to be working.
Social thing.
Yeah. I was always able to keep that one at bay. And then school was like too much. So I stopped going to school and I dedicated myself more to work. And I was like, I'm going to keep going to school for 3 more years and make less money than I'm making now. Like, what's the point of that? So I dove into that work life, and then just focused everything in my life on work and whatever free time I had, to having a good time.
Right. So in this kind of like, lifestyle of excess and like rules that are getting bent to, your own rules that you're bending, and diving into work and party lifestyle, in this time you meet what you describe as the girl of your dreams.
Yeah I was working as a manager in the sister property of the place I first started at.
Mm-hmm.
And one afternoon I was just standing there like by the front stand, and this silhouette walks through the door, like long hair down to her thighs, 3-inch heels, attitude. And, she's like, I'm here to see the manager. And I was like, well, I'm the manager.
Yeah.
And she like looked me up and down, just me up and down. She was like, no. She's like, the other guy.
Okay.
I was like, all right. I was like,
she called you.
That moment, I was done. And she was working there as a server, as a waitress. Her brother had a job there the summer before. And I was just like totally in love with her. Mm-hmm. And, I'd like tell my friends, and they're like, see that girl? They're like, oh, Janine? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, I'm going to marry that girl one day.
Right.
And they would like just laugh at me because they knew she hated me.
She hated you?
My guts. Yeah. She
really?
hated my guts. Yeah.
Okay.
But a couple years go by, and I'm working at another place, and I've got like some of the people from that restaurant I've brought with me, and we're all hanging out one night after work, and she's there because she's dating the bartender, my friend, and she's like, Kareem, you gonna give me a job? And I was like, no. She's like, what do you mean? And I was like, no girls. Like, there's no girls here. We're all guy team. There's no headaches. I was young in my previous job, and everyone that worked there were all these like 23, 22-year-old college girls. And, I was 23. I was the manager. I would date some of them. I would date other girls. So I was like, there's going to be no troubles here. I was a troublemaker pretty much.
Yeah. Okay.
And she's like, what the fuck, and I'm like, so 2 weeks later, I had some guy that quits, and I call her up. I was like, hey, you want a job? And she's like, hold on. She like puts me on hold to like talk to her brother about it all. He's like, he likes you, right? She's like, yeah, I know. She's like, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
So she came, got her a job, and about a year later, I had been dating someone else. We broke up. She was dating the boyfriend, the bartender, my friend. Mm-hmm. They broke up, and everything kind of like worked in our favor. Everything just like put it all in place.
Okay.
And one day, it just happened.
Okay, so you've got the girl of your dreams finally. So what are you thinking at this point?
I'm thinking kind of what everyone else is thinking.
Okay.
Honestly, at this point, it's like, what did you do in your life to deserve this girl?
Right.
And it was kind of like this running joke everyone had. We were very well known. Along the years in my like wine studies and connecting, I had gotten to know a lot of the wine people in the industry and all the alcohol reps and everyone like that, and other restaurant owners and other sommeliers around town in Miami.
Yeah.
It's a very like homogenous, incestuous industry. Everyone knows everybody. And she was really amazing and great at what she did. And she was very well known. She had since moved and started working at one of the biggest hotels in Miami.
Right.
And, everyone knew us and everyone was like, oh, when are you going to make an honest girl out of this woman? Like marry her. And like, what do you do with this guy? And it was a joke, and everyone knew us and we knew everybody.
Yeah.
But she came from a very like wealthy family, and very hardworking people. And I would think, I'd come home at night, work, and I'd sit there and by her, and, I'd look at her and, I'd ask, I'd say the same thing to myself, I'm like, what did I ever do to deserve this girl?
Right.
Who am I? Like, what have I done? I'm just some, glorified bartender.
And her family at this point too is very disapproving of the relationship.
Yeah, they weren't exactly the most supportive of us.
So that doesn't help. Yeah.
What didn't help made it very difficult. She had the support of my mother, and it was kind of like my mom and her were very close. And but we knew in the beginning it was going to be that way. Like we knew, and we had this very interesting talk a couple weeks in, where we talked about marriage, we talked about kids, we talked about divorce and all those things. And we knew that a lot of people weren't going to be happy. Like our friend group wasn't going to be happy because she used to date my friend,
right.
and there was like a big thing in this falling out. But we knew, and we didn't care. We knew that this was it. Like we had found our person,
Mm-hmm.
we were happy. We didn't care. We were going to do whatever we needed to do.
Yeah.
So life after that was a lot of work, a lot of work. We wanted life to be a certain way. And we had a really great life for me and for us going out anywhere in Miami. Being in the industry is very different than being famous or rich. Like you're a VIP because you're famous, because you're rich. That's it. You take those away, that's it.
Right.
You're in the industry. You go to another place where they know that you're in the industry. You're the most VIP person that exists because I relate to you.
Okay.
Because I know what you do. Yes. I know how hard you work. And I know that when I go to your house, to your place, you're going to treat me the same way.
Right.
So whenever we go out, we go to the other fanciest restaurants in the city, and I knew every sommelier, best wine sent to the table, best food. More than half of everything was comped and free, like if we even paid a check. And she was on the hotel side. So she had all the hotels, I had all the restaurants, and it was just a great life. And every year we'd go to wine country and spend time staying at vineyards, at wineries with our friends who are the owners and the winemakers and everything like that. And it was an amazingly beautiful life, a life that, anyone looking from the outside is like how much better could it get?
Sure. Yeah.
But like every life, there's always things people don't see, and there was the difficulties of having a relationship and me working very late at night and her working from the early morning to the afternoon, and, her parents not being welcome, very, very accepting. It's a lot of things, and those things they build,
Right.
But we were the glue that we were always needing. We couldn't spend more than a couple of days away from each other. And all we wanted to do was work together again and have our own thing and, be our own masters in our life.
Wow. So with its struggles and ups and downs or whatever, this is for you, this is it. You're wanting to spend the rest of your life with this woman, I can imagine. Yeah. And then, it's something, a curveball, major tragic curveball gets thrown your way.
Life comes along one day.
Mm-hmm.
So we had both been like now trying to have a change in our lives that would make things better. And I was looking to get on the other side of the industry and work for a wine brand, either a winery or a distributor or something like that, where it wasn't me going and being inside of a building all day long,
Yes.
all night long, dying in a restaurant. I always felt like I was going to die in a restaurant. I
Right.
went to this box and I was there from like 4 p.m. until 2 a.m. And she was like over hotels, and she had gotten to the top place where she could. And there was no more room for her to go up. No one else was going to go anywhere. And she decided to shift into wellness. And she took on the job as the general manager of a luxury fitness gym in Miami. So she was there for a few months, and I was in the middle of this interview process. I'm like, sure thing getting this job. And final interview was going to happen like the next week. And it was like a Thursday. I'd gotten this email and about the job, and she read it, and she's like, I know you're going to get this job. Like, I know you're going to get this job. Everything's going to change for us, And, she's like, I'm doing this new thing. Everything is working great. Everything was like amazing.
Right.
We had gone out like a week before that, and she had gotten a brand new Jeep. Mm-hmm. And the next day after that email, like, I was going to be off again, and we were going to like drive around Miami, take the top off and like go to all their favorite places. And I would get to drive it that day. What was going on in her new job, there was a physical trainer, like the top trainer in the entire company, like executive level company, who had all of these violent and aggressive outbursts and exchanges with staff and other people, and over years of time, and nothing had been done because he was the number one provider fitness trainer for the company.
Right. He's probably bringing a lot of money to the company, and they're like, we got to let him go, but the money, it's like, yeah. Okay.
So she came from a very different type of environment where she can recognize and realize that this is a red flag and that this is something that leads to bigger problems.
Yes.
And we had been talking about how she was going to take care of, the termination, and how she was going to deal with it. You're going to have security there. You're going to have other executives there so that everything is clear. And everything was supposed to go great. And the executives didn't show up, and the other people didn't show up. Security was there. She took care of it. She had a couple other managers. And she called me afterwards, and she's like, hey, everything went fine. Everything was well. I was relieved.
Right.
We had gone out the day before on that tour with the Jeep. It was like the best day ever. We went to all of our favorite places, but in the back of our minds was this thing, and we had to have a couple of calls about it. We were both, very concerned. So it was like this relief,
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, yeah, everything's fine. I was like, well, security's still there. And she's like, no, they left. And then she's like, I have to go. And before she could even like hang up the phone, I said, I love you. And it was click.
Yeah.
So kept on getting ready for work. It's like around 11 o'clock, and getting ready for work. It's like 12:30. And I'm like, I haven't heard from her. She's going to call me back. I wonder what's going on. And I get this missed call from a New York number that I don't know. And, I was like, wasn't like answering calls from numbers I didn't know.
Sure.
I was like, oh, they'll leave a message, whatever. So I'm like shaving, and 5 minutes later, same number. So I pick it up and I answer the phone, and it's a friend of hers. And she's like, hey, he's like, hey, did you hear about Janine? And I was like, no. And, he's like, she got shot.